Greetings, housemates, and welcome to another episode of Learn to Play Total War Warhammer. I'm Phwop, and today we're going to be talking about the Warriors of Chaos. They play quite differently from other factions, so there's going to be a little bit more we need to go over to help you out, to help you get started here. First off, let's go with the faction mechanics. Horde. This is a big one. The faction has no settlements. Infrastructure and military improvements are linked to each individual Chaos Horde. What that means is every single one of your armies is also a settlement and needs to be improved individually and starts with nothing. It's kind of a big deal. They can become a little bigger than others in other settlements. Probably being about the size of a province each, as you have a lot of construction slots. But every time you buy a building, it uses up surplus population, which you get faster and more steadily than other races, but still, the cost increases all around. So hordes still need to specialize a bit, though in the end, a very old horde who has gathered a lot of growth can have pretty much everything, I believe. And corruption. Chaos corruption, which is different from vampire corruption, but causes some of the same problems, can be spread in enemy territory, leading to public order problems and even chaos rebellions. It is not a huge boon to you, but it is a massive pain for your enemies. And everything that increases chaos corruption increases the amount of corruption that is caused per turn by either that character or that horde or whatever it is. And is it's a really nice thing to have. It's also important to remember that corruption is a province-wide attribute, and it's applied to all regions of a province. If you have a horde camping in one region raising the chaos corruption, that whole province is actually going to suffer for it, which means rebellions can pop up in 2, 3, maybe even 4 different regions once you corrupt a single province. Their playstyle, they have a strong unit roster with armored infantry and monsters. While they have a few lighter armored infantry, their infantry are almost universally incredibly heavily armored and stronger than other individual units on a one-for-one comparison, I believe. They're also exceptionally skilled. The Chosen are particularly high in melee attack and defense, rivaling some lords. And they're all quite tough and, like I said, quite resistant to non-armor piercing attacks. They do have severely limited missile options, but they have a high degree of magic, as you can have Chaos Sorcerer Lords who have spellcasting abilities, and you can have Chaos Sorcerer heroes embedded in your armies to add in the needed ranged attacks. Plus, they have 3 different lores, flavors, that is, you can have Chaos Sorcerers come in, so a pretty wide diversity of magic. Strong diplomatic penalties with almost all factions. Yeah, no one likes you. You cannot trade, so don't expect any income to come from anywhere besides sacking, raiding, and looting, and finishing chapters and quests. Pretty much when it comes to income, you have to be very cautious. You have to watch your upkeep carefully and maintain a pretty hefty bank, lest you find yourself running on empty. One of the good things about the Chaos Hordes, the Warriors of Chaos, is that they have 3 legendary lords. You have Archaon, the Ever-Chosen. His faction effects are extra movement range for all lords and heroes, and a reduced upkeep for Chaos Warriors and Chaos Knights. He's not a bad starting pick. He's not my first choice, but he does have the lore of fire, so he has spellcasting abilities, and he is incredibly powerful. He has a lot of quest items he can get. He can become an utter beast in both melee and magical combat. You have Kolek Suneater, by far the most physically powerful of all lords, with almost twice the health of most melee lords, lots of damage, naturally fast, natural resistances, and it is just a monstrosity on the battlefield, as he is a Dragon Ogre Shaggoth, which is a top tier monster for the Chaos. But my personal choice to start the game off is Prince Sigvald the Magnificent. I know he may be a weak human, but his faction effects, if we look at Kolek's faction effects, it's just upkeep reduction for Dragon Ogres and Dragon Ogre Shaggoths. So no major bonus there. Prince Sigvald is excellent, one, for his faction effects, leadership +6 versus humans, so all of your armies will have +6 leadership on all units, no matter what the circumstances are, as long as they are fighting other humans, which includes the Warrior of Chaos minor factions in Norska, as well as the Empire. So that's pretty good. And all of your characters, heroes and lords, will cause 1 more Chaos Corruption per turn that they are in a province, which really adds up over time, and makes for a very solid choice. He also begins with, I believe, the most powerful bonus units. His additional units are 2 top-tier elite infantry, regular chosen, which are perfect for hacking through anything pretty much that isn't heavily armored, and halberd infantry, which are good against larger units, that is cavalry and monsters, as well as being armor piercing. And a hell cannon, which is a nice artillery unit, one of the only ranged options available to Chaos, and very, very good. Archaon simply begins with some Chaos Warriors and some great weapon chosen, the perfect armor piercing, but not as good against cavalry as the halberds. And Kolek begins with 1 group of Dragon Ogres, which are powerful, if a little slow for cavalry. They're basically powerful crushing cavalry monsters. And some Chaos Warriors. So let's begin with Prince Sigvald. Prince Sigvald's personal trait is also a major reason why I would choose him first. He increases the horde growth of his horde by 1. And that may not sound like much, but growth works differently for Chaos than it does for other factions.
Who are these grotesque?
So to look at the settlement part of your horde, you click on the building panel, army panel, building panel. Note also that you start off with a much more powerful army. If you check it out in diplomacy, you're rank 3, which is pretty good. So when we look here, here's how growth for Chaos works. For other factions, it's 100 points to get your first point of growth, and then it's 300 for the second, and the amount of growth points you need continuously increases as you gain more and more surplus population. For Chaos, it's always the same amount of growth for 1 population point, but the amount you need to spend continues to rise as you buy new buildings, and every building requires some or most buildings require some amount of population surplus to build. This number also goes up as you build new buildings, so if I built straight up to 4, and then I wanted to construct a Dragon Ogre Gathering, it would cost me 6. I'm not sure if the formula is exactly dependent, but it does seem to be that for every building you build, all of the costs go up by 1 population. But the good news is you get it population surplus faster and more steadily than other factions. However, you'll note here that the base growth is only 1 per horde. That means 20 turns until you get a population surplus. Now, with Prince Sigvald's trait, Supreme Vanity, we get +1 horde growth, which is actually double the standard amount of horde growth. You can also gain 4 growth every time you raise a settlement. So raising settlements is actually a very important mechanic for your hordes, to get them up to par to the point where they can build new buildings. The other thing that can increase your horde growth, there's only 4 things that can give you horde growth. One is his trait, or one is characters. You can get it from traits, you can get it from some followers, so fighting lots of fights and spreading followers across all of your hordes that increase growth is really good. You can get it from characters' special quest items. None are available here, but I believe Archeon has that. And this skill, Horde Growth +1, +3, +5. Note that the first point is worth half as much as the second and third point, so you really want to invest in there. Probably every single Lord should have 3 points invested in Tribes of Chaos, so that they can have a powerful infrastructure as well as army. And there's no research that'll give it to you, but you can get it from upgrading your encampment. Note that it increases by 1 up to +5 at the Ruinous War Host. So, quite a different way of growing your infrastructure here, and something you want to pay a lot of attention to. Otherwise, all of your units, there are no interdependencies. You don't need you don't need a mound of blades to build dragon ogres. All of your units are pretty solid. You do want to go up to the trial pit sometime soon, so that you can build these upgraded first tier units. Especially the Marauder Horsemen are really nice, because they become shielded and gain armor piercing. Plus their Vanguard deployment and their general just flexibility is really nice. They can attack on the move, so while skirmishing, they'll back up from melee units and continue to pelt them. Even if they're moving directly away from a unit, they will continue to attack them with their ranged weapons as long as they're in range. You only have 2 heroes. The Exalted Hero, you need to build Ruinous Altars to increase your capacity here. And Chaos Sorcerers, who to increase the capacity, you actually need to build Chaos Rifts. Your heroes are really important, one, for fighting off all of the enemy heroes that will be attempting to assault your units or slow you down, sabotage, whatever, and nullify the corruption that you're spreading. Also, I'll note that the Exalted Hero's ability to embed himself in your army and train, which you have to unlock with skill points, as well as his ability to let you recruit units with up to 3 levels higher than they normally would be, is really, really important to cultivate early on, because with an Exalted Hero spec'd for recruitment and training, and a Lord spec'd with the Gathering of Might, you'll note that points 2 and 3 increase unit experience by 2 for all recruits, or by 1 and 2 respectively for all recruits. You can recruit level 5 units right off the bat, as long as you're in enemy territory. It turns out that you can only the level bonus from Exalted Heroes only applies when you're recruiting in foreign territory, which is interesting. But the nice thing about levels is that each level increases leadership, melee attack, and melee defense by 1 point. So 5 extra points of leadership, 5 extra points of melee attack and melee defense is a big boost for all your units. You need to pack as much power into your units as possible. Plus, with an Exalted Hero speccing and training, your units will be gaining, I think, like 45 XP per round, which means that you'll have some really, every unit that survives will become elite quite quickly, packing on that much more power onto your already excellent units. It's also a good reason to, if you have training going on in an army, ditch the units you're not going to continue to use in favor of new and better units. Like if you just unlock Chosen, get them into your army as soon as possible, as soon as you can afford the extra upkeep, and ditch your Chaos Warriors, or let them die in battle and then disband them if they're just a wrecked unit. One of the other things about the Chaos is when you do recruit Lords, you can unlock these 2 legendary Lords, and I don't know that having more than 3 hordes is going to be very sustainable upkeep-wise, because you basically never get upkeep from anything, from any permanent upkeep. With just one elite horde and one kind of ragtag horde, I was functioning with almost negative 3,000 upkeep a turn. But fortunately, I had banked like 15,000. Still, that's only like 5 turns of upkeep as long as they don't keep pillaging and destroying. So I find it hard to believe that you could have 3 fully developed hordes very easily. When you recruit heroes, they will create new hordes. It does cost population surplus to recruit these guys, which is one of the reasons Sigvald's a great starting character, because he is the fastest at building up population surplus. Another reason to go with Sigvald is he can specialize in the campaign skills down here, Tribes of Chaos and Gathering of Might, pretty easily, as he's actually the least effective in combat compared to the other 2 legendary lords. He's no slouch in combat by any means, but his quest artifacts and natural stats and abilities don't even come close to matching up to the combat capabilities of Archaon and Kolek. So, if you can only support about 3 hordes, maybe you don't want to recruit anyone who's not a legendary lord. The Chaos Sorcerers can be tempting, as they will provide you with a spellcaster, but you can recruit Chaos Sorcerers to embed in your army as well. So perhaps Vessel, income from sacking settlements plus 25%. And remember, the legendary lords have quests for incredibly powerful items. Archaon especially has some really, really powerful items he can get, a lot of them, making him a very powerful commander. Plus he has access to some fire spells, and he's not too hard to unlock. All you have to do is slaughter 10 sets of captives after a battle. Note that you can't do that when attacking settlements. It has to be other armies. But if you just keep up at it, it is really not too hard to achieve. And then you'll get access to Archaon, who, for one, costs no favor. And this amount, the more hordes you have, the more population surplus you need to get the next horde started. But Archaon is an excellent choice. And of course, he can't be killed. He will just be wounded and come back, even if his horde is destroyed in battle. Kolek Suneater is actually quite easy to unlock. All you have to do is construct the Dragon Ogre Gathering building. And as you can see, it's right here. You just need to build up to rank 4 Unholy Legion encampment, and then I think it's 5 or 6 population surplus to build the Dragon Ogre Gathering. So pretty easy. And then he will become available, Kolek Suneater will, and he of course is a really powerful melee lord, and all Dragon Ogre units in his army will, he can recruit them more cheaply. But if you spec out Sigvald, like I'm suggesting, to not only increase horde growth, like I think you should all hordes, but to increase the unit experience, and you take your first Exalted Hero and you spec him into training and unit experience, then what you can do is recruit units with Sigvald and then give them to other hordes. The only issue with this is, and I'll show you right now, 2 hordes in close proximity actually cause attrition to each other, so it can be a little tricky working out how to give units from one to the other. It also makes sieging with multiple armies a bad idea. You only want that second army to show up right when you're about to crush a particular province. You want to spend as little time right next to each other as possible. And the range is really pretty far. So yeah, Chaos Hordes don't like to be next to each other. And of course they each have individual building. keys, but none are going to grow quite as fast as Sigvald does. Alright, so let's move on to technology. Here you'll note that there are key or gateway technologies. They each cost loot, favor, gold, and quite a bit more of it, doubling every time. All the way up to 40,000 favor, which is a ton, right? But once you research the gateway, there are a couple technologies available, and you can see you get more and more technologies as you go up. They do take a while to research. These all take 5 turns after the initial 1 here. Paying the gateway cost always just costs you 1 turn. These further on up, I believe these cost like 7 or 8 turns to research, 12, and it keeps going. But all of these bonuses are really quite good. Income from sacking settlements plus 10%, post-battle loot 10%, recruitment cost minus 15 for marauder units, which actually covers 3 different unit types, or 4 even. Each one of these researches is very powerful. It does pay to focus on the economic ones: post-battle loot, income from sacking settlements, income from sacking settlements, post-battle loot. These are your 4 economic researches. Everything else is combat prowess, unit experience, that kind of thing, hero experience. So you only need to rush, I think, up to Blood for the Blood God, and then the rest, just take your time and suit yourself with whatever your hordes are specializing in at the moment. Chaos Trolls, Chaos Spawn, Forsaken, because every research is actually quite powerful. And when it comes to your particular units, the Trial Pit is very flexible with these nice Vanguard missile cavalry, some of your few ranged units, Great Axe Chaos Marauders, regular Chaos Marauders, and poisoned Chaos Warhounds. Note that poison is really quite powerful, degrading a unit's capabilities by about 20%, except damage by almost 40%. Poison is really quite good, especially against units that have smaller size, which means that more and more of them can be poisoned. Although I'm not sure, poison may apply to the whole unit, I'm just not sure. It does last 5 seconds. The Blasphemous Icon, basically the worship side, is also really good as it gets you up to the Chosen, which are probably the best infantry in the game. Very powerful, very high melee attack, incredibly high melee defense, which makes them very tough. And on top of their high armor, already toughness, and excellent shields. They are just great. Remember that halberds are good for striking down monsters and armor piercing, and great weapons are simply great for armor piercing in general. Plus, on this, you pick up the access to Exalted Heroes, and for every Ruinous Altar you have, you can recruit another Exalted Hero, so build these in every horde. Chaos Knights and Chaos Knights with Lances are excellent cavalry units, as you would expect. Chaos Trolls and Armored Chaos Trolls, also excellent, as you would expect. Small, tough, regenerating units, just keep them away from fire damage. The Arcane Vortex unlocks Chaos Sorcerer recruitment, and the Chaos Rift is required to recruit additional Chaos Sorcerers. But Chaos Sorcerers are a very powerful addition to your army, providing nice range damage. The Chaos Spawn is a powerful, morale, immune, basically unbreakable anti-infantry unit. Very strong, monstrous infantry. The Forsaken as well are brutal infantry units that do extra damage as long as their leadership, as long as they're not wavering, that is, their morale is like good, they are significantly more powerful. But they are prone to serious losses, and their morale isn't so good. The Dragon Ogres are like, they're about twice as fast as most infantry, not quite as fast as a lot of cavalry units, but they are incredibly damaging, very, very tough, small units, resistance to missiles. They scare nearby enemies, reducing their morale. They're amazing shock cavalry, basically. And a step up from that is the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth, which is just a single massive unit that causes terror, is even faster than those guys, does tons of damage. It's equivalent to a lord on the battlefield, and then some. The Chaos Giant has higher melee attack than the Shaggoth, higher damage, and otherwise fairly similar. It may be just your personal choice of what you want to go with or what you have the most bonuses for. The Mound of Blades is going to increase the unit experience for all your recruits, an excellent combo with Sigvald and an exalted hero who specializes in recruitment and possibly training, to help seed your other hordes with really high level units from the get-go. And of course, all of these buildings reduce your upkeep for what they allow you to recruit and maybe lower tier units, which is really important because that's basically less money draining out of your pocket every turn. And lastly, the Unholy Furnace unlocks the Chaos Chariot, which is a 1 unit or a size 1 armored anti-infantry unit, which is pretty cool. It's nice and tough, it's very fast, it does good damage, additional damage to man-sized or smaller, that is non-cavalry, non-monstrous units, with an incredibly high charge bonus. And then if you upgrade it, you will get access to the Hell Cannon, which is your other ranged unit besides Chaos Marauders and Spellcasters. But it is a nice siege unit. Very powerful, very high damage. It has 2 abilities that other cannons do not have. The ability to increase its speed and the ability to augment up to 2 of its attacks, as it does have a 12-second cooldown between shots, or 12.5. But I'll note that this red, it says the effects are 24% speed and plus 75% ability recharge. Basically that means you have to choose one of these or the other, blood or boom, because it makes the recharge and the other abilities go up when you use it. So choose wisely, extra attack or extra mobility. And the Gore Beast Chariot is simply an upgrade to the other Chaos Chariot with more damage, more armor, piercing capabilities, and a higher charge bonus. So the Chaos, lots of armor, some powerful monstrous units, and I think very dependent on heroes. So focus on building hero recruitment facilities in every horde. Plus, Chaos Corruption, use that to your advantage by just hanging around and being a pain in the butt, raiding people, leaving your heroes in their provinces to get Chaos Corruption up, and then Chaos armies, neutral Chaos armies, can spawn to hassle them. One of the other notable benefits that Chaos has that other units do not, while they may have basically no diplomatic capability besides occasionally declaring peace or revoking it, they are able to, with some settlements, I believe it's minor settlements, but I don't know the rule exactly. Post-combat, you can actually awaken a tribe, which will make that tribe your military ally. Of course, if you raise them, that's not going to be possible until someone rebuilds it. Sacking them beforehand means that you won't be able to awaken them this turn, and of course it means that it's going to be a little less capable when you do awaken it. But if you awaken a tribe, it will make it allied territory. One of the most important factors in them being allies and awakening them is that you'll note that you actually replenish your units, your casualties, very quickly in allied territory. You can even encamp, I think for... he doesn't have enough health, but I believe encamping actually increases that even further. So, awaken allies can act like outposts to let you replenish your casualties, because otherwise you do simply have to encamp in enemy territory, which can be a pain, although it will raise Chaos Corruption. I'll also note that Chaos Corruption up here in the Norska area in these lands is already super, super high. But there you go. Alright guys, I believe that is all I have to tell you about starting off with Chaos. I suggest you start with Sigvald for his horde growth. I suggest you always go for Tribes of Chaos in every one of your lords, maybe immediately, because it is so important to spend that second and third point in Tribes of Chaos. And I think you should probably have a single horde that specializes in Gathering of Might, maybe even in Corruption if it's going to be sitting around recruiting for your other hordes, so that you can provide your other hordes with high tier, or recruited units. Since Sigvald is going to have the growth to produce more of the he'll have the growth, he'll be able to produce more of these buildings than any other horde, especially if you start off with him. He'll have a jump start. That kind of makes him the perfect recruitment horde or support horde for the lords that will come later. And of course, I suggest with your first exalted hero, you specialize in the campaign skills as well, teaching them the ability to recruit units at higher levels. Only while in enemy territory is a catch, but it's definitely worth it for an extra 3 levels, which is another 3 more leadership, another 3 more melee attack, and another 3 more defense. And in training, so that they can constantly level up the units in the horde that they're embedded in. I think that's exactly the way to go with an exalted hero. It might even be worth it to have exalted heroes specializing in training in all of your hordes, because that just means you're going to get really, really, really elite units on top of your already good units. And of course, with technology, I suggest skulls for the Skull Throne, Rituals of Corruption, Erection of Ruinous Monuments, and Blood for the Blood God be high priorities, as they do increase the amount of loot you get. And when you sack a settlement, you can make up to 14,000 or more cash, which is a big, big deal, and you want all the bonuses to that you can get. Remember that Archaon actually gets 25% more from sacking settlements as well, so it's a big deal. Alright guys, I know this was a long one, but there's a lot to talk about in Chaos because they do play quite differently, and there's a lot of little rules and nuances that are worth knowing. I hope this video helped you out. If you learned something or you just enjoyed it, then go ahead and like it. If you want to catch more videos like this from my Learn to Play series or any of my other series, then subscribe to my channel. And until next time, my friends, farewell.